All right.
Mark, I hate blue jeans.
Welcome back to the monthly Ceph developer meeting here. Looks like we got a pretty good crew, but we'll be probably have a short one tonight. We don't have a whole lot of blueprints on the docket today. So, Sage, where do you want to start with this one? You want to start with your Messenger 2 plans?
Let's start with the RBD one, actually, since we have everyone here for that. Or maybe others will show up.
Okay. Whose was that?
That's Victor.
It's Victor's.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Do you hear me like this well?
Yep.
Okay. Because yes. Let me try sharing my screen. Do you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
So this is the blueprint I did. So I would like to discuss today. I would like to discuss snapshots and consistency groups. So far, we have two pull requests that have been merged. This pull request included operations for creating, deleting, and listing snapshots, operations for adding, removing, and listing images in not snapshots, consistency groups, then adding, removing, listing images in these consistency groups, and now I would like to discuss design for snapshots of consistency groups. So this topic consists of two. We need to discuss how to modify how to modify existing current design of image snapshots so that they can be included into consistency group snapshots, and then how we can create consistency group snapshots. So let's discuss this first part, image snapshots. So here's what I suggest. So this is the structure that is used for images snapshots. So there's those go to attribute snapshot underscore and snapshot ID in every image. And I suggest to add this field to this images snapshot, which is called snapshot. Oh, it's actually right. So, and this snapshot type will have this, not type, snapshot reference will have this type boost variant, one of two, self-standing snapshot or group member snapshot. Self-standing snapshot is just an empty constructor with no value, just specifying that, yeah, we'll do some of it. So specifying that this is a snapshot that was created individually, and group member snapshot, it means that this snapshot was created as part of group snapshotting process. And then this group member snapshot will have fields that allow us to identify what group snapshot it belongs to. So group pool ID, group ID, snapshot ID. So yes, and as a result, we have to modify decode and encode accordingly. So I just borrowed this code from other decoding and encoding first for similar data structures. So this is how we want to modify image snapshots to allow referencing group snapshots. And in order to create these snapshots, we need to be able to specify who created them. So as I see this we will add one more parameter to snap create function in image class, and this type will have this snapshot type of snapshot reference type, which, yeah, basically, if it's user snapshot, then by default will be user snapshot. Otherwise, it will be group snapshot.
So these self-standing snapshot group member this is basically an enum. There are no data members for this. Just like a type ID or something.
I've been changing them to user snapshot, so that would be like the old. I think that's the old legacy style of like it was just something that was created through the API.
Okay.
Like no external links.
Okay.
Not owned by, not in a namespace convention. It's user's namespace as opposed to.
Oh, as opposed to other fields.
This is something that's going to have to be used also for group snapshots, and we would also want to recycle this capability for the sync point snapshots that are created by RBD mirroring. This is something that kind of fell off the table as it was nice to have, but we never got it implemented for RBD mirroring.
Okay.
So it causes some problems with RBD mirroring too, where if you try to delete an image where a sync has just started, you end up with like you're racing with a sync point snapshot that still exists. But if it's something that wasn't created by the user, we should be able to handle it, inside librd and clean up automatically because it has nothing to do with the user.
Right. Okay. I'm just confused. We've in the past we've used this convention where the lowercase type names are sort of the plain old data type style types that are just data members and don't have like pointers or anything fancy. So,
oh, I see.
It doesn't really matter. That's
I'll take this into account because, I was confused why the names are different.
So this is just it's a variant basically. So depending on what the type is, then you decode all these extra fields that are specific to those types. That makes sense.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I got it.
It's the same pattern that we use throughout librd actually, for all the RPC messaging, for the journaling, for
yada
yada.
Okay.
Soon to be the persistent cache.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Okay, so this is how I suggest to create special snapshots by just adding this parameter. I'm not sure if it's the right thing, but so far it seems to me the easiest idea. Yeah, if it's wrong, well then I'd love to hear the opinions. So what does it mean? Right. So because of this, we want to expose. Well, I suggest to expose some of methods that are available in image context, but not available in image. So when I create, when I have an image, I create a snapshot of this image. Then I need, in order to reference this image's snapshot, I would like to be able to get image's ID and ID of the snapshot, of the image's snapshot that has been just created. So I suggest to expose these two functions. Well, three to be precise. Three functions. Get a snapshot ID, get image ID, and get snap info. All these functions they are available in image context. Yeah, go ahead.
Wait, so who needs those? I was confused on that.
So as I see the implementation, I'm going to create this function, create image snapshot, create consistency group snapshot as a function in librd/internal C file. So when I start creating snapshot, I have all images that are in this consistency group. So I open those images.
Yeah, you open them. You steal the exclusive lock on them so that they're yours to manipulate. But I mean,
then
at this point in time, you're on the internal interface. You already have the image context, so you don't need to add anything to the public API, because if there's any metadata that you need, it's all there.
Well, yeah, I tried. So here's the thing. So when I create, I do not have access to image context if the only thing that I have is image context, is image.
No, but you wouldn't know, because so you have a new an internal. So you have an API method like consistency group snap create or something like that, group snap create, which calls an internal method that it has to iterate through all the images that are associated with that consistency group, and as part of iterating through that, it has to open up all those images internally. But it's not opening those images via the librd external public API. It's opening them. It's in the internal API. Just use the internal API, because we don't have to worry about ABI or API breakages, because the code won't compile.
Yeah, well, but the thing is that in order to call, so here's how, when I invoke this method snap create images method snap create, the snap create inside image. So actually snap create is implemented in librd file, librd.c
yeah. So like I said, don't invoke anything on the public API, because
but in order to
group snap create is going to be inside the API. It's going to get a list of, here are all the images I need open. It's going to open all those images internally, creating basically librd image contexts, and then it's going to call the open method on them. And then once it opens all of them, then it's going to try to grab the exclusive lock for all of them. And then once it grabs the exclusive lock for all of them, again, this is all just directly invoking methods chained off of librd image context. So like image context, state open, image context, exclusive lock, try lock, or actually request lock. So once you have all the images opened, all the locks acquired, then you can basically just go straight through and go image context operation snap create, passing in this snapshot namespace or reference to your group, and then you kind of collapse all these things together, because you can spawn these off in parallel. I mean, once you get you can open all the images in parallel, you can grab all the exclusive locks in parallel, and then you can snapshot create in parallel up to the RBD num concurrent ops, and there's helper functions out there to help you throttle, kicking off state machines up to that limit. And so then once all those then finish up, then now you've gotten all your images open. They have the exclusive lock, and now you've created all your snapshots, so you're done. And you can close all your images. If you have a failure at any point in time, I mean, if you couldn't open one of the images, abort. If you couldn't grab the exclusive lock for one of the images, abort. If a snapshot failed to be created on one, do you abort, or do you just return an error and force the user to say group snap remove to get to a clean state? The problem with aborting is you could still crash in the middle or something like that. So you could, no matter what, you've got to be able to handle the case of snap or group snap remove, and it has like some images that have the snapshot and some images that don't. And it's just got to be able to say, yeah, I've cleaned up successfully.
I see. All right. Well, I'm not sure it makes sense to continue my talk because Jason.
No, but everything else is good. I mean, the concept is I think, at the high level on the CLS side, the class method side, we want to have a new data structure, a variant. I like all that stuff, to be able to hold these things. The one comment I made is just because it's probably would be good to enforce a new feature bit on consistency groups on a given image, because you don't necessarily want an older client that doesn't understand all these new rules about how to handle consistency groups, to be able to. They can open it read only, but there's a special flag to say like, hey, if you want to open it as a read write image, you need to support these feature bits. So that was one of the emails I sent a while ago said I think we do want to have a consistency group feature bit. I mean, it's just a dynamic feature bit. It can be turned on and off dynamically as you add an image to a consistency group or remove an image from a consistency group. But I think that's important.
Okay.
Other than
right.
that, I mean, I think you're on the right track from my point of view.
Okay.
Especially if you don't try to use the public API to open all the images within the internal.
Okay. I understand.
And I'd love you forever if you didn't put it in internal.cc. Just create a new like group.cc or something like that, so that file's already like 10,000 lines long.
Yeah, sure.
Because I mean, at the end of the day, you probably want state machines. I mean, because you're kicking off like asynchronous requests and coalescing the requests and kicking off more asynchronous requests and coalescing the requests. So it'll potentially be a large method. So just instead of I've been taking things out of internal and moving them into like here are the segregated locations of where things go. Like here's everything that deals with IO. Here's everything that deals with operations. So this would be something that deals with consistency groups. So it'd be nice. And this is something I haven't mentioned before, but I think it'd be good to keep pushing that direction of these are basically modules, and this is everything in this module is more or less responsible for the these type of operations, just for maintenance.
All right. So Jason, can you add at least some of those thoughts that you just gave me? I'm not sure I'll be able. I mean, I can listen.
I'll put the comments about just use the. I'll document all the open internally, exclusive lock, all that other stuff. I'll put that in there. I've been commenting. I've been commenting it throughout. You can see my darker purple. Somehow I was assigned darker purple, which is not that obvious. But I'll keep putting comments through.
Well, actually, maybe you can change the color.
Yeah.
Well, in any case, so do we want to continue with my talk, because Jason basically covered everything I wanted to. Jason,
Well, I mean, it's up to you. Do you have any more questions? I mean,
well, there are a couple. I think so. Here's one of the. Well, then, I just want to ask several questions that I have, and then maybe we can wrap up with this one. So when we capture this exclusive lock, images exclusive lock, does it prevent this image from being snapshot by other clients? So does it mean that any other snapshots can appear while we hold this exclusive lock?
Yeah. So, well, you could handle it in one of two ways. So that, when you basically own the exclusive lock, you can optionally say I'll accept requests from other clients, or I'll reject requests from other clients. I would
requests. You mean requests?
They're not going to send you IO. They're not going to send you IO operations saying, "Hey, please write this block of data for me." But they'll send you, "Hey, create a snapshot for me, or remove a snapshot, or yada yada yada." Operation requests.
So
in theory, this should be a very short-lived operation. So I'd rather probably just say you just block requests while you're doing it, because number one, you don't want to be in the state where you grab the exclusive lock and now you're waiting on image A, and now you're waiting to get the exclusive lock in image B, and somebody sends you a request saying, "Hey, can I have that exclusive lock back?" And then in the background it says, "Yeah, sure, have that exclusive lock back because you requested it." If it's probably just easier to say, "I'm not accepting requests right now," and it'll automatically in the background handle like telling those clients, "Hey, I'm not accepting requests right now," and they'll deal with it. And they'll keep trying again and again and again until you are sending requests. But in this case, in a perfectly functioning system, this shouldn't be like a 30-minute process. This should be on the order of seconds. Especially because you're considering on the other side, you have QEMU processes or whatever that now have IO blocked. I mean, you don't want this to be we shouldn't design this to be or worry about this being like a long enough living state that we need to worry about handling, requests from other people. Because once you start handling requests from other people, if you do it fast enough, then you've got to basically abort those requests to say, I finished and I'm giving up the lock. So, hey, go try that request again because I'm not going to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I'll put some code examples in your pad about. I'll point you to where we do that, where we block requests and things like that.
Yeah, that would be perfect. Okay, another thing I'm curious about. So when we create this snapshot, my first idea was to so when we create this consistency group snapshot, and then we create individual snapshots, we have to give those individual snapshots names. And I was thinking that this name should be the same as consistency group snapshot, but then I realized maybe it makes sense to do them completely random so that they do not clash with any existing names.
Yeah, if anything, I think they don't have a name. And bear with me on this because librd can look up the name if it's got that consistency group linkage. If I do a list snap, it could look up the name to give because it's an ID, right? Because I can rename a snapshot. So it's instead of having basically just a random ID that says this is snapshot XYZ and you don't know what it links back to, I think it's more constructive to say, here is what it is. And now that we're talking about it, I think it's also probably would be nice to we have like a snap lists method right now in the API. I think it would be good to have a snap list too or something like that, where we can kind of delineate or provide those extra pieces of metadata about saying like, hey, here's a snapshot, here's its name is XYZ, and its namespace is it was a user created snapshot, or here's one that was created by its name is XYZ and it was created by RBD mirroring, or here's one named XYZ and it was created by consistency groups. So when you do a snap list on the RBD CLI, you can have like an extra, but maybe even by default, probably potentially is, it doesn't even show you things that aren't created by the user, because why do you care? Because they'll automatically get cleaned up. It's just going to be confusing if you see like these system internal snapshots. But maybe you could do like a -- verbose or something like that on snap list, that you could see all the internal ones of, here's the group snapshots and here's the RBD mirroring snapshots and XYZ. Just a thought.
All right. So it should be able to list them only within this namespace.
Yeah, or at least provide enough metadata on the CLI to say like this was user created, this is created by a consistency group, this was created by I think that'd be a nice feature, so someone doesn't say like, especially if it's like the consistency group snapshot name is foo, and you see a snapshot named foo, you're like, whoa, where did that come from? And I can't delete it, and because I have to delete it through the consistency group, I can't delete it off the image it's directly.
Right, but does librd allow to have snapshots with the same name, or what is it?
Well, that's why I'm calling them kind of the concept of namespace, because they really should be allowed to have the same name because they're in different namespaces.
Oh. I see.
It's the here's the user created namespace. Here's no duplicates in the user created, no duplicates within the consistency group, and no duplicates within RBD mirroring, which is fine because it auto generates GUIDs each time.
Okay. Okay. Another question. All right. So here's the thing. So for example, we're in the group state committing. It means that all snapshots are done. They are recorded, and the only part that is missing to rename this candidate to normal snapshot. So my suggestion is to just say, hey, try again, and completely separation rather than rolling this back all, right? Because if all snapshots are done and the only part that is missing is to rename this attribute.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about And any of these things, because kind of like the rest of the library operations, I wouldn't worry about rolling them back. I would worry about is the kind of like the opposite operation able to handle a partial state? Like I can partially create an image. I mean, there's so many steps that are involved in creating an image, but any number of one of them can fail. I don't go and create an image again. I don't worry about trying to, when I open the image, try to reset the image back to, well, what parts of the image are missing or anything like that. I just say like, the user got some notification that something failed, and to get to a consistent state, they would remove it and start again. Because even if you crashed while you got 1 out of n, snapshot, sub-image snapshots created, you're going to be in the same state of, I got them all created and I just haven't flipped the bit that says, I verified that everything is good. So you're kind of in a pending state to, yes, everything is good state.
Mm.
And then when it comes time to remove, I mean, if it's, I try to remove it across all images that are in the snapshot group. But if I'm missing one or more, it's because I need to handle the case of I crashed when I was removing before, I crashed when it was creating, and it just tries as hard as it can, just like the image remove. It tries as hard as it can to get all the last bits up. And then once it says like, I guarantee, at this point there are no more bits, and I've seen at least one bit, referencing this, so I know that it wasn't like, it was I don't need to return an no-ent error. Once I've cleaned up that last bit, I can say, yes, I finally cleaned up this group snapshot, and life is clean again.
So let me rephrase it just to be sure I understood it. So you suggest to, so if we fail during this very last step, we did everything, and we just failed to commit this state. You suggest to keep it as it is until we can clean it up, or
Yeah,
what? Like,
I mean, especially for first pass, I wouldn't worry about all these cleanup states, because I think there's going to be so many edge conditions on these cleanup states that it's probably just easier to say, I've started to create it, it's pending, or it's complete. And if it's pending, it could have been anywhere along this, along the lines of creating it. And besides, I mean, at least got to the point where it created the snapshot group record within the group, the snapshot record within the consistency group. But there could be one or more images that haven't been properly linked back to the snapshot, because there's n number of steps that you have to go through in order to do all those things. It's just easier to fail with an error and allow the user to, group, snap, remove, and it cleans you up automatically, than have to worry about all those states for this first pass. I would see this as a nice to have, but no matter what, you still have to deal with the case of hard crash, like anywhere in the middle. And hard crash right in the middle means you still have to do a group, snap, remove to get back to a consistent state.
I see. Okay.
We're coming up in a half hour. Should we move on to the next?
Yeah. Yes. I think we're pretty much done.
Cool.
Thank you.
Hey, yeah, feel free to ping me on IRC or SEP or whatever with any.
Okay. Sure.
As you come along with these things, and like I said, I'll fill in your document a little bit tonight.
Yeah, I just wanted, I definitely understand that my like vision will be changing, as I start implementing this. So I just wanted to, just give general pictures so that.
Yeah, you're on the right track. I'm trying to make it easier for you.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. Yeah. Let's move on.
All right. I think Alfredo's still not here, so let's do the Kerberization discussion with Dan. Are you here, Dan?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep. So I was just trying to find an Etherpad to take notes and stumbled across an old Etherpad from, I think, a session a long time ago. So I just put it in the chat. And I think actually this is the most specific detail that's been written down as far as what sort of that first set of steps are. If you want to take a look. Matt, I don't know if you've seen this, Marcus.
I think I'd heard. Oh, we recapped this essentially verbally. I just read. Yeah, I think
this looks familiar. I think I must have been helping to write this, maybe.
Yeah.
Not sure at this point.
That was a while back.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So yeah, some things that are. Would we invite? I'm not sure which details to talk about. I mean, I see some things leap out at me here, but we should at least allow.
Well, what is there anything sort of in this first section of goal 1 that leaps out at you that because this pad has some specific details like
yes,
specific keys to set, sort of how it would be implemented, what the user experience would be.
One thing that leaps out is GSS API. Whether we will abstract out Kerberos from GSS, with GSS API or use straight Kerb.
You tell me.
Well, I know what the members of the Kerberos community would say, but at the same, but I have to say, using I mean, Marcus is more of an authority here, but my experience has been that working with Kerberos directly and its APIs directly in MIT or Heimdall, which I think Heimdall is sort of dying, or even dead now. Again, Jeff Altman wouldn't agree with that, but I think it is. Is that you have a much more explicit and direct and clear access to the primitives. You know what they are. GSS API was supposed to support a lot of authentication capabilities, or strategies with different capabilities, and essentially only Kerberos really exists.
Okay.
That's why. Do you disagree with that higher? I don't know, but if we're not going to, if we're actually assuming a Kerberos environment and want to do something else, that's a consideration.
Well,
And does anybody have any other non-Kerberos thing that we would want to use the GSS API that would make us want to use that instead?
There was an early PK. There are plans to integrate it in with PKI, which never really happened. But there might be some really old code that we could dig up somewhere that might do that. It's almost certainly not well supported by the rest of the world at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, some parts work very well and are well understood. Working with principles and attributes and so forth are very rich. Working with, for example, encryption, not as much. Their encryption support in NFS has been, in my view, hindered by GSS API support rather than helped. It's just now just in the last couple of years become possible to do more interesting stuff and due to work by I guess the Microsoft community mostly,
yeah, there is an active IETF effort to deal with GSS API, and they continue to come up with some advancements, and there may be some opportunity there to sort of cooperate with the NFSv4 community in terms of some of those advancements.
But if you're and you can work, although it's a little bit bizarre, if you want to work with, for example, MS Pack, that's achievable with GSS API. It's done in Ganesha.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
So one of the things that I was concerned about when I started going through Sage's email thread was if we're gonna go for Kerberos, most likely we're gonna rely on LDAP, and then now we're relying on 2 external services to do that kind of thing. And I wonder how much dependency we wanna create for that. We have Kerberos, and then if LDAP is out, we're not going to do much. Now, if we have LDAP and we don't have the KDC running, then here we go. We have another problem. So I started thinking about it. I like the idea about Kerberizing it, but just the dependencies of some other services was something that I was concerned about.
I think this is pretty much why we implemented our own, or one of the reasons why we implemented our own Ceph instead of just using Kerberos from the get-go. But I think the way this would actually be implemented is we would define a new auth type. We already have none and Ceph. We would define a new one called Kerb5 or whatever it is that would interact directly with a libkerberos library. Which seems to be Matt's preferred route, at least. If down the line we decide that we would prefer to use GSS API, then we define another auth type that's called GSS API, and that would also work presumably almost as well, or almost the same way, but just use a different set of libraries. But that would allow you to use Kerberos for users who are logging into the system to administer it. So if you're on the CLI and you want to do something, then and you're authenticated via Kerberos, then you could just use your Kerberos credentials to authenticate to the cluster and then do whatever you want to do. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the daemons have to use Kerberos to authenticate. You can still also define with those same roles Ceph keys. And if Kerberos is down, you could authenticate with a client admin key that you have stashed somewhere that's using Ceph or something like that, right? So because the system is pluggable, I don't know that I wouldn't worry about adding additional support for Kerberos. Doesn't necessarily mean that we are solely dependent on it.
That's a good point, actually, Sage. You never want to be dependent on network resource if you're the thing that all the network resources depend on when they come up.
Yep. So I think that the steps in my mind would be define the new auth type as Kerberos 5. If the client negotiates that with its handshake with the monitor, then it would use the Kerberos library to get a ticket. I still think this initial step of using libkerb of having the user authentication, the user gets the Kerberos ticket and authenticates to the monitor, but then once the monitor authenticates that the user is who they say they are and figures out what the credentials are, either by mapping to a Ceph entity or pulling it out of LDAP or whatever we decide over there, it can give it a ticket that could be a Ceph ticket so that the rest of the cluster is still using Ceph. It seems like a sort of a simple way to get sort of the usability story and without having to do all the daemon rotating key stuff using Kerberos primitives, which I think is going to be a lot more work. Yeah, I don't know what the library is called.
Well, actually doesn't matter. There's various ones for MIT, and Microsoft has a full implementation, and there's other open source implementation called Heimdall. There's other ones. So it's all defined as abstract operations.
Is there which one should we be using? I mean, if we're going to go off and do this,
MIT.
Okay.
MIT. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. That must be MIT.
All right.
It could have been Heimdall, but I think that ship has sailed.
No, it can't be. It's MIT.
That's because you're in Boston.
No, it's because I actually deal with the one user of Heimdall left that I know of besides Apple.
The Apple guy works on MIT Kerberos now. You're talking about Louver.
Yeah.
No, Samba. Samba AD uses.
Yeah, they absorbed it. That's right.
Oh, right.
We absorbed it, and we've been, and I'll say I regret it. But thank you for telling me Apple moved on. That'll give me more ammunition to try and get rid of it because what a mess.
So this has a different, I listed like two ways in the email that I recently sent that we would map a Kerberos principal. So once the ticket makes it to the monitor, two ways that the monitor would decide what that user's capabilities are. I said it could query LDAP and LDAP would tell you what group it is, and then you would have the group defined in Ceph that would have the capabilities. Or LDAP would actually have the raw Ceph capabilities in LDAP in some weird way that we'd have to decide. Or maybe we would use the pack thing, which is, I don't know, whatever, that sounds like complicated. But in this document from forever ago, we actually had the idea that in the auth database, you would actually just define. I guess I listed that to you. You just define the Kerberos principal name and map it to one of those. Map it to a Ceph client.
Yeah, that's
so we could do that too.
Fertilization, and that works very
That's
well. That's a very clean starting point.
It's tedious to configure because you have to configure. You have to set up the user in Kerberos, and then you also have to define the same user in Ceph and define what they're allowed to do. So I think
in the long run, what you'll want to do is set up a mechanism where most Kerberos users don't have an explicit identity in the Ceph user database, and somehow they get mapped in some form. You can have POSIX attributes out in LDAP, and that's probably the most natural model for how you would want to interact with that in Ceph.
Well, yeah, this goes down a Primrose path, but I mean, but the idea of pack is related to this. I mean, Daniel was mentioning LDAP or things before earlier. The most convenient way to think about it, to me, it seems like the most convenient way to think about things is to not worry about that. But almost everything that has that I'm familiar with, AFS, DCE, and Microsoft file systems and NetWare, eventually came up with a more or less agreed on this mapping. But their purpose was to create the domain database for all the objects in the environment and organize it there. And Kerberos, as Marcus says, just mapped to it. But that means that on the one hand, it means we can deal with it later. But once we do decide to deal with it, then you have to well-define things. And this is, I tried to bring this up in the pack discussion. You really can't talk about pack as given without talking about AD. It basically contains AD binary information. Now, the idea has been generalized, and the Kerberos community intends to do so, but they don't have an implementation. But the idea is you enhance your KDC to propagate the group information or other secret ticket information abstractly, however you wish. So a super KDC could do that, but that's quite a way. That's why I called it Blue Sky.
It doesn't exist today, so it's not something we designed to today.
So let's not worry about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless you're specifically worried about integrating in AD environments. That's the only case it would help you.
Hey guys, one question as I hear this topic: is it possible to build this authentication in Ceph Manager and not in Mon? I mean, it sounds like an administration and
that's interesting.
API. That's why put it in the Mon and not put it in something like Ceph Manager? Or...
I think that the authenticating clients is that sort of critical step that happens in order to bootstrap their access to the cluster. So I think it belongs on the monitor. And in fact, you generally wouldn't even tell clients who the managers are until they authenticated and the authentication keys said you're allowed to talk to these other people.
But, I thought the principals we're talking about here are essentially users or admins. Not. I mean, it sounded like this is I'm a storage admin. I want to use LDAP. We log in with my user account and password and get some to figure out what I can do in the cluster, as opposed to say OSDs and other things connecting.
Right.
Marcus will dig in here because I mean this gets into how advanced uses of how we want to define Kerberos protocols. The simplest models don't require that at all. The KDC can get the service tickets you need, and
Ceph is kind of interesting because you've got multiple different pieces of it that want to talk to each other, and then you have users in the mix. And so what you're actually probably kind of looking at there is some sort of proxy arrangement where you as user A are talking to server X, which is then talking to server Y. And server Y would probably see your identity as kind of a composite of server X and your identity.
So you're proposing that we consider this sort of RxGK-like approach of token mixing?
That probably would become very interesting. That would probably be a relevant approach for the way Ceph is constructed.
RxGK was worked by the AFS community that sort of introduced this idea of composite, time-based, essentially its own sort of tokens, and that seems like that's implied in your Mon design or something like that.
I mean, it's basically saying that your ticket has different sets of capabilities for different services in the same
Not
ticket?
exactly. They went further than that. Like with service tickets would give you that, but you would but in this RxGK model you would initiate with for example, a client would a cache manager, an AFS, a traditional AFS client would have credentials for the users. The users would initiate with an initial service. I guess it was the volume database, and then if that server could protect the ability to talk to file servers later.
Yes,
Okay.
SFFS is probably one of the places where that would be a natural.
Yeah, exactly. SFFS clients mount points are going to do that eventually, because you're going to have a server that's mounting the file system and then multiple users authenticating on that server. And the client is going to be proxying those identities to the metadata server or the OSDs in order to do whatever.
The MON is probably a simpler case because I think you basically have kind of two classes of things that talk to it. One of them is you have administrators doing administrative actions on it. And the other one is you have machines who are just basically they're using it as kind of a location broker, finding out where resources are.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to, I mean, every Kerberos discussion can like go off into the weeds with all the stuff. So I want to focus on sort of what the first steps are to actually move forward on this. So, so in this first section on the Etherpad goal 1, there's implementation. Can we sort of agree that this is the right set of first steps? And Daniel, do you want to, does this make sense to you? Or are there?
I think there's some minor spelling issues, but otherwise it looks good.
Yeah. Yep.
I think it looks like a good start to me. Marcus, would you agree with that?
Yeah, it looks okay. Another possible variation would be to have each MON have its own host identity. I know Sage was not very keen on that because that makes the provisioning process for setting up a MON a lot more complicated, but it is another viable model.
I mean,
that's the only interesting thing I see here.
Yeah. It's the same trust domain. I don't know. I'm not sure it buys us anything useful. But it does get complicated.
More debugging.
Yeah. An interesting problem to noodle over. Yeah. All right. Okay.
I'll go over it, Sage, and if I have any problems understanding some more of this stuff, I'll either ping you or Matt or Marcus.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it seemed like it might be useful to try to have some kind of carve out some space in one of the stand-ups or another meeting that we would have occasionally to sync up on this.
Yep. Yeah, we can set up like a weekly call or whatever works for you, whatever cadence makes sense. Daniel, just let us know and we can chat.
Okay. Do it.
Yep. And email, of course, works too. Okay, cool.
One other thing that occurs to me here, we sort of occasionally talk about, and we want it to be not just Kerberos in the future, and Kerberos is just sort of the motivating one because that's the first one. And I just want to bring that up again because I was thinking about Keystone, which I'm sure we all hate, but also we're going to be in a lot of OpenStack clouds. And eventually, not now, but eventually we're going to need what we build here to at least be a stepping stone to integrating with Keystone for user identities.
Yeah, I think
more how it works.
I think the pluggability for defining different auth methods is there. I think that the tricky bit here is that where you're going to start out with a Kerberos ticket, and then once you authenticate with the monitor, then it's going to sort of switch to like one using the internal auth method. Yeah. I think that's the weirdness that's going to happen. It's going to be annoying, and we'll deal with it when we sort of stumble into the details. But once that's solved, then I think Keystone will be easy because we will solve the hot part, and then it's just sliding in.
Just saying, like we were talking about which Kerberos library and everything, and let's.
Yeah. Well, I think that the nice thing is that even if we don't solve that weirdness, though, it's still useful because you can, even if you just solve the client authenticating to the monitor and you ignore it giving you a ticket that lets you talk to other daemons, you're still extending to get the monitor, so you can still do like 90% of the administrative commands. So you have something that we can test and will be moderately useful. You just won't be able to like OS detail, I guess.
Yeah.
So we can go from there. Directly, I don't know. Why couldn't the client do this mapping directly? I mean, I guess you could have some other extraneous service that use Kerberos to like get a Cephx ticket, and then you just do everything else the same way. But I think the idea is to try to get eventually sort of phase Cephx out of the picture. At least I would sleep better if eventually we were using not Cephx someday. But I think it's gonna take a while to get there. So yeah. Anyway. Okay. Should we? Anything else here? Should we move on to the next topic? All right. We're still no Alfredo. Okay, let's go to Bassam. Runtime detection of SIMD instructions for the EC libraries.
Yep, should be a straightforward one, I'm hoping. But so essentially today we have all these different flavors of plugins for all the different instruction sets. I think the ones we have are a generic one for Erasure. There's an SSE 3 flavor, an SSE 4 flavor. Mm-hmm. And then on the ARM architecture, we have a generic one and we have a neon one, which, and you know, you can imagine that actually just by looking at what we have right now, we're missing one. There's a carryless multiply that is missing because we don't actually create a flavor for it. Mm-hmm. I think it actually has quite a bit of improvements in performance if we were to enable it. So this got me thinking onto why do we need to support all these different flavors and not, you know, the what's in style now is you build a library once and it does the runtime detection of instruction sets and runs the appropriate code as needed. And I noticed we're doing that with the new compression stuff with zlib and ISA stuff that was just committed. So this is an attempt to do a similar thing with erasure coding. You know, in a nutshell, you build Erasure and GF complete, and once if with a compiler that has everything turned on, so cross compiling is possible as well. And then at runtime, when say at init time of GF complete and Erasure, we detect the processor and look at what SIMD instructions are possible. It's a really cheap operation. Intel platform is just looking at CPU ID. And then the binary itself has all the different flavors compiled in. So we just run the appropriate one.
Yep.
So it's a very significant improvement, I think, to kind of provisioning and trying to figure out which library to use. And you know, in all likelihood, people that are doing this right are writing the same detection code at runtime in some Ansible script or something.
Yeah, we're definitely doing this wrong. I fully endorse this message.
Yeah. I think
notably.
Go ahead,
Such.
I was going to say. Go ahead. All right. I think the question is not that we should do it. It's just the sort of the details of how you actually want to implement it. Right now, we compile a bunch of different plugins with all the different various flags. So there's like Erasure, SSE, blah blah blah. It seems like the simplest thing would be to make just like the Erasure auto that like figures out, checks your processor, and then switches to whichever compiled variant is the right one. Or you could have one that has like if-defs or I don't know, whatever, dynamic branching and all the code. I don't know how you, whatever. You just have to figure out how to actually implement it. But I think that it's not just easier usability, but it also solves an important problem that you have clusters that have different sets of servers that have different capabilities. And right now you actually configure the plugin type globally, and so you actually can't run with
so you need to be
optimization.
You need to be very careful about that. And so that's what I was going to point out. So the problem right now is that we have different erasure coding profiles that are mathematically identical but have different names because they require different instruction sets. That's the problem, right? So the first thing we want to do is identify which ones are supposed to be identical and build tests to make sure that they really are. Then once your code exists that dynamically switches, or I mean, honestly, you could put it in the config file at first. It doesn't matter that, like it could be in the OSD config file which variant it should use. But the important thing should be that the OSD map shouldn't specify. The OSD map that has the pool information needs to deduplicate all of the various jerasure, whatever variant, Koji, what have you, down to the same name, and it needs to do it transparently behind the scenes without requiring users to do anything.
Yeah,
that's going to be the annoying thing.
From what I can tell so far, the majority, I've already done the bulk of the changes in GF Complete, and I added a merge request. From what I can tell, majority of the work should be transparent to whatever the algorithm is being used as part of erasure, because it's really whether you're doing, that's not the case.
No, what I'm saying is the irritating part is going to be fixing our sins. Right now, we write into the OSD map like what erasure code profile a pool is supposed to use.
Oh, I see.
You need to transform whatever is currently scribbled in there to the correct instruction set stripped variant. Basically, you need to map every possible version of Koji onto one common version transparently without requiring people to do stuff, because there's no way we're going to be able to explain how to do this properly. That's impossible.
Yeah. Map it onto the generic thing, and then the generic thing will auto.
Exactly. And then there will no longer be any of those other variants. So that's going to be a bit of a trick.
I see. Yeah, I haven't looked at that part yet. I really focused on how to get the Gerasure and GF Complete library doing SIMD execution so far. But
the second one.
The other thing, just to your comment, Sage, I think one of the ideas is you could instead of having a Gerasure auto, we could literally just leave the names as they are and make them all auto.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think it should say auto. It should just say jerasure.
Jerasure. Yeah, exactly. That's basically what Sam's saying. So if you say jerasure SSC4, it actually means jerasure that then auto detects whatever you have and then does whatever your processor can do.
I'm
so
saying
that if that's currently there will just become meaningless, basically.
We could have that actually error out and just say that is not the name of a plugin anymore. I don't think we should, because they're existing tools. But insofar as we bother to not error out on those, it's just to make other tools not break. We want to, as much as possible, get rid of even the ability to think about the instruction set that the algorithm is implemented in.
Well, it could generate a warning.
Quick question.
It could generate a warning.
How do you handle upgrade in split cluster? If you wipe out all the names of the old things that are supported, and those things are still in the cluster.
Right. So what I'm saying is you don't wipe them out, but if you decode, that is, if you actually pull an OSD map binary encoding off disk and decode it, the new code, the enlightened code, should just transparently map it back to the non-instruction set one, because the enlightened versions of the code couldn't possibly care less.
Right. So I guess what I would say that.
So the unenlightened parts of the code.
If you left everything, all the names. So to help with the migration and the OSD map issue, would it help if everything remained the same in terms of naming these things? And
it probably would.
Underneath the covers, we just switch them all to auto.
Yeah, it's just that going forward, we want to prevent people from propagating this error. In other words, it should be a compatibility thing and not a thing we carry forward. We should carry it forward long enough to upgrade clusters, but not any longer.
So I would say that in Kraken and or Luminous, basically when we have an OSD map that says jerasure underscore something, SSC4, SSC3, whatever it is, it just interprets it as jerasure silently. And then
but continues to
the jerasure plugin auto detects and uses whatever things are there. And also on the monitor, if we see an OSD map that has jerusher underscore anything, it generates a health warning that says, by the way, your pool is specifying a processor-specific plugin name.
That's a good way to do it. Yep.
And that'll force users to clean it up and just say jerusher.
Well, and keep in mind, currently you're not allowed to change the erasure code profile, so we'll have to have a command that is like clean up the sanitize profile or something. Yeah.
Or I could do it
Is there
automatically.
a reason to automatically? Yeah.
And actually, that
well,
if it's a command
the
that if you go ahead and make sure all the OSDs are up to date and that's okay to run it.
That's the hard part because it's right. Yeah. Okay, so that's true. Once you've set the there's a switch you have to flip, right? Once you flip the switch, one of the things it could do is go through all the pools and sanitize the things.
Yeah.
That would
once you decide.
Okay.
Once you're pure luminous or whatever. Yeah. Okay.
No, there's an actual command you're going to have to say flip that says, I promise not to load any older OSDs onto this cluster. I'm done the upgrade and we're luminous now.
Right.
Okay. I agree. That's the best place to do it.
Yep. So Bassam, I wouldn't worry as much about all that because I think that's going to be sort of annoying. Well, that'll be mop up at the end. I would focus on just getting a plugin that's called just jerusher that does the auto detection and will do the right thing, and then we can hammer out the details later.
Yep.
Great.
Cool.
That's it for this one.
All right. I lost my window. Next. Snapshots. We still don't have Alfredo, right? Yeah, so I put Messenger 2 plans on here just to figure out what the steps forward are. I think that's a conversation I actually want to have with Halmai, though, and he's not here, so I'll just do it on the list. I think we can defer that to later. And so the last thing on there is really the Alfredo's plans for set deploy, Ceph Ansible, and Ceph installer. And he's not here, right? I'm not just missing him on the list.
What time zone is he in right now?
He's
Eastern.
Is he?
I think someone tried to get hold of him on IRC, but oh wait, no, there's Alfredo. That's earlier. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to run through it or do you want to just do it on the lists?
We can do it on the list. Let's see, Verada is suggesting, do we talk about some of the new encoding and decoding stuff? I had a couple glasses of wine, so I don't know if I'll be super useful in this discussion. I'm already super confused by all the different options here, but we do have everybody who's sort of dipped their toes in here. So I've copied you on that last email, Sam.
Yep.
I think that we have sort of two. I think they're orthogonal. So there's one thing which is adding this idea of estimate that your branch does, Sam. So you still have encode as it exists, you still have decode as it exists, and you have estimate.
Their version does the same thing. They just have encdec overloaded with unsigned. It does exactly the same thing.
Right, but sort of that other version has this other property that you can define, encode, decode, and estimate in one function. But I think actually we can do what. So Verada's latest branch is actually based on yours, and it's just constructing more of those container templates and traits and stuff that do that. And I think we can separate out those two processes so that you could manually
totally
define an estimate function, and you could define the sort of magic encoding that does all of them.
I left that out because it looked like that had been figured out, so I didn't care. But yeah, no, that's the right way to go. If you do go the encdec route, there would be an instance of that template that notices and generates out the full traits thing from it. That's how it would work. You want the ability to generate a separate estimate one. So the core one should be the traits object.
Calling estimate.
But you can absolutely generate the traits object automatically if the relevant free function exists, which is the right way to do it, I think.
Okay, so this is the part that I get lost on. So there's this traits object that defines these methods for a given type, and is the idea that if you don't explicitly define it, then you would because that defines a traits method called encode that encodes type T. But right now, what we actually want is sort of a top-level encode function that takes a T argument.
Yeah. So what you do is you'd add another template, like sorry, not another template, another macro, very much like our generate class whatever, except it does it in terms of the overloaded enctech method.
Okay.
That's
what I thought.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now, Sam. Right now in the current branch, what I did is kind of written the right class encoder to automatically templatize the type. If you look at it.
Okay.
And then
try to look at it tomorrow. The main trick I wanted to show you guys was I don't want you using my branch exactly because it's not as like it uses Sage's appender and the consensus is we don't want to go that direction anyway. I mostly wanted to introduce the trick that integrates the feature stuff properly so that it automatically does that especially for pairs and maps, and that's the main trick I want to get in there. I want this to work for existing types. So I wanted to hook into the current system. As for the rest of it, though, I'm sure you guys know better.
The other key thing that I would like to get in there is if we can define encode in terms of a template, so that appender could be whatever. I think that actually is the right route because we could actually define that appender type could actually just be a car star P instead of a complicated type and we could actually use it that way too. So
right now, Sage, the encode function does try to do the unsafe appender and safe appender. We could replace with the char star if we get the correct estimate there. So it's still a template.
Okay. So it sounds like you're on the right track then. So I would just I sent that long reply this afternoon that I was mostly confused about. So maybe but I think actually was mostly on the right track.
Right. Yeah. So there are some the containers, especially the maps. Some of the first one has no features like strings, and then some of them has features. So that's where I kind of I don't know what to do there. So maybe I will just I will have the container based on the features right now.
So I think that the key thing is that you have the key type and the value type. If either of those types require features, then encoding a map requires features.
Yeah.
And
sure.
if neither of them do, then you don't need to. But if you don't have to deal with that case because you can always pass features to an encode function that doesn't take features. It'll just ignore it. Like all the encodes I think are defined in terms. Oh wait, actually they aren't.
No, they are.
Yeah,
it's important. The other direction is the one that's important. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So the ones that don't require features have that encode, that top level encode function as takes the default argument. It sets it to 0. So you can always pass it in and it'll just get ignored. But the ones that actually do require the features don't have So I think I put it in the email basically. If either of them requires features, then the STL type requires features.
Yeah. Sure. I kind of got that and written the same way, but I will try to correct it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but one thing what is missing right now is the custom encode for a container if you want to do it our own, not follow the
you would just you explicitly pass in a different traits feature. Yeah, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
You guys were on the right track. You make it so that the default template type or trait type is the one that gets built. But if you pass in a third argument, that's what it uses. That's the right way to do it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that's the way it worked in my branch, but if not, it's the way it worked in yours, and that was the right way to do it.
It was the way it was in Alan Verada's original branch.
Alan's, yeah.
I don't think yours did it, but okay.
Thanks, Ish.
Do you have enough to go in the right direction?
Yeah, I think so. I will code up something today, and then we'll do it in the core stand-up or something.
Cool. Okay. Sounds good.
Thanks, H.
Is there anything else anybody wants to talk about while we're all here?
Sounds like a whole lot of nothing.
We killed AutoMake today. That was very exciting. Big thanks to Ollie and Casey and Gifu and everyone who did a lot of the heavy lifting there.
Yeah, yay,
That was
no automake. Wonderful.
That was very satisfying. So, good work, everyone. Yay.
How long until Joule is deprecated?
Yeah. Yeah, a little while.
Just a few years. All right.
Yep. All right, cool.
All right, well, if that's everything, then just put a reminder in here for the video for people watching later that the next Ceph Developer Monthly will be on Wednesday, October the 5th. We'll be back on a Eastern time zone friendly 12:30 p.m. For our EMEA friends and those of us who want to have a normal sleep schedule. So we'll see you guys back on the 5th. And then hopefully everyone is going to OpenStack Barcelona. If you haven't purchased your tickets yet, check the lists. I sent out a discount code if you want to get some money off of that. So, but other than that, we'll see you guys in a month.